there, very good evening and welcome to the news tonight. I'm Tracy Shiljit, getting you through the day's top stories from India and across the world, starting with the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi starts his Africa visit with a day-long stopover at Mozambique. India signed 3 MOUs, including a long-term pact on purchase of pulses. Bangladesh asks India to examine speeches of controversial Mumbai-based preacher Zakir Naik. NIA to probe if Naik's preaching did influence the Dhaka terrorists. Second terror attack in Bangladesh within a week. 4 people are killed as attackers target congregation of lakhs of people who had gathered for Eid prayers. And US sanctions North Korean leader Kim Jong-un personally for the first time, charges him and 10 other officials with committing human rights abuses, including extrajudicial killings, torture and forced labor. Prime Minister Narendra Modi started his 5-day visit to Africa today. His first stop was at Mozambique, where Modi held wide-ranging talks with the country's President Filipe Nyusi. 3 MOUs were also signed between India and Mozambique, apart from agreements on strengthening cooperation in agriculture, healthcare, security and defence.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi started his maiden Africa visit with a day-long stopover at Mozambique on Thursday. Upon landing in capital city Maputo, the Prime Minister was accorded a warm and colourful welcome at the presidential office. Modi reciprocated by greeting the Mozambique nationals in Portuguese, the country's official language. In his first engagement of the day, the Prime Minister met Mozambique President Filipe Nyusi. After delegation-level talks and a round of restricted talks between the two heads of state, both countries signed 3 MOUs in the field of youth affairs and sports, prevention of drug trafficking, and a long-term agreement on purchase of pulses from Mozambique. Later, in a joint statement, both Prime Minister Modi and President Nyusi stressed on the need for a stronger partnership between India and Mozambique in the years to come.
Whether it is agriculture or healthcare or energy security, natural resources or technology, skill development or institution building, security or defense, Mozambique's strengths are also the areas of India's need. And what Mozambique requires is available in India. We complement each other.
Both leaders also agreed to bolster defense and security relations against the backdrop of rising incidents of terrorism. Modi described terrorism as the gravest threat facing the world today.
We also want our partnership to ensure the safety and security of our people. President Nyusi and I recognize that terrorism is the gravest security threat facing the world today. It impacts India and Mozambique equally. The networks of terror are interlinked with other transnational crimes.
Finally, the Prime Minister expressed his commitment to share India's experiences, technology and capacity with Mozambique, assuring that India will walk every step of the way in Mozambique's march towards economic prosperity. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
And now to Bangladesh, where Eid celebrations turned tragic. 4 people were killed and at least 13 others were injured in an explosion and a gun battle near a mass prayer gathering in Dhaka on Thursday. Police have arrested 2 attackers while a pistol and machete were recovered from the scene. Bangladesh has been in a heightened state of alert in the wake of a similar attack last week.
A second attack in Bangladesh within a week, and it came as lakhs gathered for Eid prayers. Terrorists attacked a police post in Kishoreganj town, about 140 kilometers from capital Dhaka. They hurled small bombs, following which there was an exchange of gunfire. 2 police officers, a woman and 1 suspected militant were killed. The injured were rushed to the military hospital.
আর জঙ্গি সন্ত্রাসী একজন স্পটে পুলিশের গুলিতে মারা গেছে আর দুইজনকে আমরা ধরেছি এ পর্যন্ত তো বাকি অপারেশন চলতেছে
There was no immediate claim of responsibility for Thursday's attack, but the government insists it was carried out by domestic militants trying to destabilize Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government. Meanwhile, the Islamic State has warned of more attacks in the country.
It's quite, I would say, pitiable and shameful because these people not only carried out these acts during the Ramzan month but also on the festive occasion of Eid. Having said that, I would say that these are not good signs for India. Bangladesh has to realize that it has been engulfed by terror.
ये दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है जी. Terror is terror. Terror is terror. It has no religion. It has no region. It's a threat to the humanity.
हम बहुत स्ट्रांगली इसको कंडेम करते हैं ऐसे लोगों के और ऐसे लोगों के खिलाफ जो आतंक फैलाते हैं हमारे देश में या देश के बाहर उनके खिलाफ तो सब दुनिया को खड़ा होना चाहिए और खड़ा हो रहे हैं.
India will send a special team of NSG bomb experts to Bangladesh to analyze and study the bombings and the recent terrorist siege at a Dhaka restaurant last week. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In fact, Bangladesh has asked India to examine the speeches of controversial Mumbai-based preacher Zakir Naik after reports that 2 of the 7 terrorists involved in the Dhaka cafe attack last week were inspired by him. Bangladesh Information Minister wrote to India, and I quote, "Already there are certain complaints from the Maulanas of Bangladesh that his teachings are not in line with the Quranic teachings and Hadith. I also request the Indian government and Information Minister that they also examine the context of Dr. Naik's teachings," unquote. Well, the minister also said that an investigation is on to see how much of Naik's preaching influenced the terrorists. One of the Dhaka attackers, suspected to be Rohan Imtiaz, the son of a politician of Bangladesh's ruling Awami League, ran a propaganda on Facebook last year quoting 50-year-old Naik, a doctor and an Islamic televangelist. When the report first emerged, the Indian government said, and I quote, "We don't ban individuals, we ban organizations," unquote. On to more national news, and the Congress today accused the Modi government of stalling recovery of 45,000 crore rupees from 6 telecom companies. Citing a CAG report, the party said that these companies understated their revenues for 4 years. The main opposition party questioned the government's intent in creating hurdles by seeking another audit by impaneled auditors of the DOT. Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad, who was a telecom minister before the reshuffle on Tuesday, in fact said that the accusations were utterly bogus.
Why is Modi government not upholding the findings of a constitutional authority like CAG instead of stalling recovery of large sums of money due to public exchequer that flies in the face of financial prudence? Who benefits from this delaying tactic? And question is why? Is this the new governance model?
Prakash Javadekar took charge of the Human Resource Development Ministry on Thursday, and the former Environment Minister promised to convert the challenges into opportunities. Javadekar, who earlier held an independent charge as a Minister of State, was the only minister promoted to cabinet rank in the recent cabinet reshuffle.
Terming education as the biggest tool for change, Human Resource Development Minister Prakash Javadekar reinforced the centre's commitment to ensure delivery of quality education to all. Javadekar asserted education was just not about employment, but also about instilling values and character building.
मानव संसाधन का विकास करना, यानी अच्छी शिक्षा देना, गरीबों को शिक्षा के आधार पर ही उनके जीवन में परिवर्तन होता है, तो उनको अच्छी गुणवत्तापूर्ण शिक्षा मिले, यही हमारा मेन मिशन रहेगा.
The HRD minister also said that the new education policy needed to become more relevant and student-centric. He also sought cooperation of states to make education more meaningful.
वो शिक्षा जो है वो अच्छी गुणवत्तापूर्ण मिले, इसके लिए सभी राज्यों को प्रयास करने हैं. हम तो राज्यों को मदद के लिए तैयार हैं, तो राज्य हमारे बराबर के भागीदार हैं.
Javadekar replaces Smriti Irani, who after serving as the HRD Minister for 2 years, took charge of the Ministry of Textiles. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
In an attempt to find a permanent solution to the ongoing fishermen issue between India and Sri Lanka, both nations have agreed to hold a meeting between the Ministries of Fisheries. The decision came after External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj met the Sri Lankan Minister for Development Strategy and International Trade. During the meeting, Swaraj emphasized the urgency to find a permanent solution to the issue. Both the leaders agreed to hold the meeting at the earliest. Meanwhile, 16 Tamil Nadu fishermen were arrested by Lankan naval personnel while fishing in international waters. The number of fishermen arrested for allegedly fishing in Lankan territorial waters have gone up to 44 since the 3rd of July. Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha wrote to Prime Minister Narendra Modi requesting him to take steps to secure the release of 80 Indian fishermen and boats seized by the Lankan Navy.
ராமேஸ்வரத்திலிருந்து மீன்பிடிக்க சென்ற 16 மீனவர்களையும் 3 விசைப்படகுகளையும் இலங்கை கடற்படையினர் இன்றைக்கு கைது செய்து காங்கேசன்துறை கடற்படை முகாமில் வைத்து விசாரணை செய்து இலங்கை சிறையில் அடைத்திருக்கிறார்கள். இப்படி தினசரி மீனவர்களை இலங்கை கடற்படையினர் கைது செய்வது என்பது தொடர்ச்சியாக நடக்குது. நேற்று கூட நாகப்பட்டினம் மீனவர்கள் 17 பேரை கைது செய்திருக்கிறாங்க.
And now let's take you through some more updates from across the country in Nationwide. The Central Government Employees Union put off their indefinite strike against the 7th Pay Panel's recommendations by 4 months. The decision came after the government agreed to set up a high-level committee to look into the grievances of the union. The strike was slated to start from the 11th of July. Principal Secretary to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, Rajendra Kumar, was suspended following his arrest by the CBI in connection with a corruption case. He was called along with Tarun Sharma, a Deputy Secretary in Kejriwal's office, besides 3 other persons for questioning at CBI headquarters on Monday morning. Union Ministers Nitin Gadkari and Uma Bharti launched the Namami Gange project in Haridwar today. The flagship program of the Modi government envisages modernization of ghats, crematoriums and development of sewage infrastructure, among others. The government will launch some 300 Namami Gange projects in Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Haryana and Delhi. The southwest monsoon rainfall has seen a marginal rise of 1% with a good amount of precipitation in several parts of the country so far. The IMD confirmed that all regions, barring the east and northeast, have started recording monsoon above normal. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis is all set to expand his cabinet tomorrow. The government will fill up portfolios left vacant after the resignation of Eknath Khadse over corruption charges last month. The 10 portfolios handed by him are temporarily with Fadnavis. The government, which has 19 cabinet ministers and 10 ministers of state, has 14 more berths to fill. With a quick break here, more news follows in a bit. Stay with us.
Welcome to this episode of Eureka. We are with us Professor Deepankar Banerjee.
After the Mars mission success, ISRO has been more and more confident and adventurous. Aditya is the first dedicated space mission from ISRO. Coronagraph essentially again allows you to study the atmosphere of the sample. Lagrangian 1 point, it's actually a position where you could look at the sun continuously.
Watch Eureka with Professor Deepankar Banerjee, astrophysicist from Indian Institute of Astrophysics, only on Rajya Sabha TV.
The US has sanctioned North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for the first time, accusing him of human rights abuses. 10 other top North Korean officials were also blacklisted. While North Korea is already under an extensive sanctions regime for its nuclear activities, analysts see the latest move as an escalation of US efforts to isolate the nation.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was sanctioned personally for the first time by the United States for human rights abuses against North Korean people. The Obama administration slapped sanctions on Kim and 10 other officials for crimes including extrajudicial killings, torture and forced labor. The measures freeze any property that individuals have in the United States and prevent US citizens from doing business with them.
Human rights abuses in the DPRK are among the worst in the world. The government continues to commit extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, arbitrary arrest and detention, forced labor, and torture.
The sanctions also coincide with a US State Department report documenting abuses in North Korea. Neighbor South Korea welcomed the decision, saying that the sanctions will raise awareness of the international community about the grave situation in North Korea.
또한 이번 조치는 조직적이고 광범위한 인권 유린이 자행되고 있는 북한 인권 상황의 심각성에 대한 국제사회의 인식을 제고하는 한편 이 문제에 대한 국제사회의 논의와
North Korea's only ally in the region, China, has however opposed what it calls the use of unilateral sanctions.
中方一贯主张在平等和相互尊重的基础上，通过开展建设性对话和合作，处理人权领域的问题，反对公开施压和对抗。
Although there's no reaction so far from North Korea, the developments are likely to increase tension in the Korean peninsula. Expressing concern over the rising tension, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has called on North Koreans to stop making further provocations.
All Security Council resolutions must be fully implemented, and these are the united call of the international community to the DPRK to reverse its current course, to return to dialogue and refrain from making further provocations.
North Korea is already subject to heavy US as well as UN sanctions for its past nuclear and missile activity. However, the latest move is being seen as an escalation of US efforts to isolate the nation. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The UK inquiry report into the 2003 Iraq war is out, and it has been scathing in its remarks on the action taken by the then Prime Minister Tony Blair. The report blames Blair for leading the country into an illegal and ill-prepared war. Blair, in fact, said that he took the decision to go to war with a heavy heart. The UK now says it is still battling the consequences of the invasion, and there are protests across Britain by war veterans and families of slain soldiers who now want Blair tried in court.
It is now clear that policy on Iraq was made on the basis of flawed intelligence and assessments. They were not challenged, and they should have been.
The UK inquiry report on the US-led 2003 Iraq invasion is out. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair now stands accused of leading the UK into an ill-planned, badly executed and illegal war to oust Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. The report kicking up a political storm in Britain.
I believe there are some lessons that we do need to learn and, frankly, keep on learning. First, taking the country to war should always be a last resort and should only be done if all credible alternatives have been exhausted.
The Chilcot report catalogues the failures in planning for post-conflict Iraq and then concludes that, and I quote, the UK did not achieve its objectives. That lack of planning has also been evident in relation to Afghanistan, to Libya, to Syria, and most recently with no plan whatsoever for Brexit.
Tony Blair saying he took the decision with heaviest of hearts, but added the inquiry proves he did not lie or deceive.
Now, the inquiry claims that military action was not a last resort, though it also says it might have been necessary later. With respect, I didn't have the option of that delay. I had to decide. I thought of Saddam, his record, the character of his regime. I thought of our alliance with America, and it's important to us in the post-9/11 world, and I weighed it carefully. I took this decision with the heaviest of hearts.
Anger in Britain as Iraq war veterans and families of the soldiers who died demanding Blair be taken to court.
I'd like to see Tony Blair taken to court. I really would. I really, really would. And hopefully that will happen. I don't know whether it'll be in my lifetime, but hopefully something will be done about this.
I'm very ashamed that we had to take part in something that was so illegal and, so immoral. At the time when I joined the army, I was a very young lad, I was only 18 years old. Ended up in the conflict around 19, I think maybe 20 years old. So, as a child, through a very young person's eyes, you don't really see the injustice. It's very much in retrospect that I saw what had happened. It didn't feel right when I was there, I'm very sad about what we did in Iraq.
The US that led the 2003 invasion saying the Obama administration has been dealing with the consequences of the Iraq mistakes.
The president's long-standing opposition to the invasion of Iraq is well known and has been extensively litigated. So what is true is that President Obama has been dealing with the consequences of that fateful decision for the entirety of his presidency. Future presidents will likely have to do the same.
Iraq that remains in chaos to this day says the invasion led to threat of terrorism against the whole world.
موقفا ذيليا تبعيا للولايات المتحدة الأمريكية كان يجب على بلير أن لا يذهب بالمنحى الذي ذهب إليه، وكلف هذا الأمر العراقيون ثمنا باهظا كبيرا.
The report has been published 7 years after the inquiry was set up. The invasion and subsequent instability in Iraq had by 2009 resulted in the deaths of at least 150,000 Iraqis, mostly civilians, and displaced more than 1 million. 179 British soldiers were also killed. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now for more updates from across the world, here's Global Buzz. China has warned the US that the US should do nothing to harm its sovereignty and security in the South China Sea. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi told John Kerry about its promises and not to take sides in the dispute. Earlier, China had claimed that Prague's arbitral tribunal had no authority to deliver a verdict on the South China Sea case. It also rejected any proposal or solutions offered by any third party. The verdict is due on the 12th of July. Vote counting still continues in Australia. Malcolm Turnbull, though, looks set to hang on to power, but it is unclear if he will be able to form a majority government. Australians are still confused as to who will lead their country. Earlier, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull called for early elections and dissolved both houses of parliament. The voting had taken place on the 2nd of July. Britain's vote to exit from the European Union has opened up a host of possible scenarios. The EU says that there will be no informal discussions with Britain over the British government before the British government invokes formal divorce proceedings by making the Article 50 request. The exit is also a setback for negotiations on the US-EU free trade deal that were already stalled by differences and growing anti-trade sentiment on both sides of the Atlantic. In the US, 600 acres were destroyed due to a massive wildfire in Nevada on Wednesday. Firefighters are struggling to control it through airplane tankers and helicopters. No evacuations were ordered till now. "26 people were killed, including 6 Yemeni troops and 20 militants in a suicide bomb blast near a military base next to the Aden International Airport on the 6th of July. All right, now let's head to sports news. And in tennis, Serena Williams will face Angelique Kerber in the women's singles final at the Wimbledon on Saturday. The defending champion thrashed Russia's Elena Vesnina 6-2, 6-0 in the semi-finals to advance to her 28th Grand Slam final. Serena took only 49 minutes to claim the victory in what was one of the shortest women's match of the entire tournament. She will now attempt to match Steffi Graf's record of 22 Grand Slam singles titles in her 9th Wimbledon final on Saturday. Meanwhile, Germany's Angelique Kerber, on the other hand, crashed a possible Williams sisters Wimbledon party as she overpowered Venus Williams 6-4, 6-4 in the other semi-final game. The fourth seed will be aiming to become the first German woman since Steffi Graf to lift the Wimbledon singles crown. She will also aim to complete a double victory against Serena on Saturday having beaten the world number 1 on the Australian Open final in January to lift her first Grand Slam title. And in a heartbreak for Indian fans, defending champions Sania Mirza and Martina Hingis were stunned by Timmy Babos and Yaroslava Shvedova in the women's doubles quarters. The Indo-Swiss pair lost 6-2, 6-4 in just 68 minutes. Meanwhile, world champions Germany will take on host France in the second semi-final of Euro 2016 tonight. This will be the 5th encounter between Germany and France at a major tournament. France will be seeking revenge for their poor head-to-head record. The two sides last met in a friendly match that was overshadowed by the Paris attacks.
World champions Germany will take on hosts France in the second semi-final of the Euro Cup Championship on Thursday. This will be the 5th encounter between the two sides at a major tournament, but the first in the European Championship. France, who only won the first meeting at the World Cup in 1958, will be seeking revenge for World Cup semi-final losses in 1982 and 1986, and most recently a 1-0 quarter-final defeat at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil.
Un peu jeune comme la nôtre, mais voilà, ça reste une grande équipe. Nous aussi, on a une très grande équipe avec de très bons joueurs. Après, il n'y a pas de rivalité comme vous pouvez le dire. Voilà, ce sera un match de foot qu'on va vouloir gagner à tout prix pour pouvoir se qualifier.
However, despite being the world champions, the Germans regard France as a strong opponent.
Ich glaube, Frankreich hat die beste Chancenverwertung. Ja. Sie haben natürlich auch 3 Spieler, die eigentlich in der Torjägerliste führen. Payet, Griezmann und Giroud. Also das sagt ja einiges aus. Und von daher denke ich mal, dass die Franzosen morgen schon auch mit aller Wucht.
Lowe also confirmed that Bastian Schweinsteiger will lead Germany in the semi-final clash.
Nee, er kann schon mitmachen. Natürlich, er hat heute Morgen trainiert, keinerlei Beschwerden gehabt. Wir haben gestern mit ihm ja auch individuell trainiert. Und die Verletzung ist so gut wie auskuriert. Und ich glaube, er hat auch gegen Italien gezeigt, dass er schon auch diese Physis hat und diese Kraft hat, eben auch von Anfang an zu spielen jetzt.
The world champions are missing Khedira and Gomez due to injury, while defender Hummels serves a 1-match suspension after picking up 2 bookings. The winner will face Portugal in the finals. The Portuguese defeated Wales 2-0 in the first semi-final at Lyon on Wednesday.
And Portugal go in front.
Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And here are more sporting action in Sports Beat. Indian shuttlers continue to shine at the US Open badminton tournament. 6 of them advanced to the singles pre-quarterfinals today. 6-seeded B side Praneeth edged past Canada's B.R. Sankeet 21-15, 21-7, while 5th-seeded H.S. Pranoy brushed aside Ireland's Joshua Magee 21-9, 21-8 in a lopsided contest. Pratul Joshi disposed of the Czech Republic's Milan Ludic 21-18, 21-13 and will now fight it out against fellow Indian Anand Pawar, who defeated Austria's David Obernosterer 21-12, 21-9 in another match. Gymnast Deepa Karmakar became the first Indian to be certified as the world-class gymnast by the Federation Internationale de Gymnastique on Wednesday. She is also the first ever Indian female gymnast to qualify for the Olympic Games. Karmakar, who hails from Tripura, had earlier won a bronze medal for India at the 2014 Commonwealth Games. Angry protesters took to the streets of Rio to protest the millions spent on the Games amidst deep austerity cuts. The Brazilian city finances have deteriorated so much that Brazil's government has authorized an emergency transfer of 2.9 billion reais for Rio's cash-strapped state to help for security of the Olympics. The Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS, heard appeals against doping bans imposed on Russian weightlifters by the International Weightlifting Federation on Wednesday. Russian world weightlifting champion Alexei Lovchev, who faces a ban of 4 years after failing a doping test, was present for the hearing. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Good night.